Morning, everybody. Thought I'd take you on a little walk through the orchard. We've got quite a bit of growth coming on from all this late season rain on most of the plants that are not past their kind of their end of life for summertime. So quite a bit of flowers still on, as you can see, on all of the wildflower mix that we put in. Sunflowers primarily, but we still have profusion of bachelor buttons and some of the places where we put a mix that was heavier on that, as well as California poppy. That one we expect to see quite a bit of next year as well. It volunteers very readily, which is totally fine with us. Not a difficult plant to deal with, and great benefit for the insects. Some of these super tall plants, like this guy right here, look at that, just about to put on its bloom. So we had some sunchokes earlier in the year that already put on their blooms, and I wondered if some of them maybe wouldn't. You can see quite a few of them up there in the landscape. There's a super tall one up by there by the apple tree. You can just see that up there, some of those bigger ones. Just looking at we're gonna have quite the show in the next little bit on these sunchokes too. They look very much similar, if you hadn't seen them from before, to a sunflower, a smaller sunflower. Most of what we have planted in is small sunflower, just because as a wildflower, like it's not as much about the seed as it is about the flower. But the award for largest first year growth, or tallest plant, I guess, would have to go to this guy right here. So look at him. This right here, I thought it would be that plant's genetic cousin, if you will. That's a black locust that we bought as a fairly small plant earlier in the season, and it is truly just taken off. It's growing quite profusely, as you see. Obviously fairly early for us to have to worry about suckering issues with that, which is a common complaint about black locust. It's not really invasive in the valley like it is in other places, riparian areas in other parts of the states, similar to the eleaginous or autumn olive, considered to be invasive in the east, especially along riparian areas. It's really not here, and some of them actually have struggled a little bit, although this fall they seem to be really getting their stride, so that's great to see. This one right here, this black locust, is actually the locust that we brought with us from the house we lived at in town. Just a sprout that had come up that we managed to save and bring along, and it should have a profusion of purple flowers in the springs called the purple robe, whereas the other one you can see down there towards the end of this row, and this guy over here, those two are going to be white flowers. Another plants that have really taken off after being kind of dormant, this albreezia right here, or silk tree, mimosa tree, quite a few different ways to refer to it, took its sweet time getting up and getting going. There's another one of those down there that's still hesitating. We have right over here this little guy, you can barely see him from here, this alder. The majority of those have struggled, and I think it's just been because the infrequent of watering that I've given the rows. I've had to very carefully and will with the site as we build the soil and hopefully start to have water just kept in the soil a lot longer and through the year. That will help, but I'll always have to carefully shepherd our water here, which in fairness is probably as it should be. We are in a soil and water conservation district, and the county has, here's that other black locust also doing quite well as of this fall. It took time to put its roots down, but the county really has a kind of just a general kibosh in my area south of a city where there's been just too many wells dug over time, and they've really depleted the the water reserves on the surface, deep underground, down to the deep aquifers, which is honestly at this point the management that we have, knowing what we're doing, should be criminal and is certainly unethical. And I find it to be almost a moral issue at this point. We have a moral imperative to try and correct some of what we've done to the aquifers in this country. So I do not mind that I have a water, not crisis, not situation per se, but an opportunity for me to develop this land in a very responsible way and to show what can be done with very little water if you take the right steps. Sorry about the road noise there. But if you take the right steps in the landscape, it will really help to improve your soil. So what are these sunchokes and why do I have them? Just as one example of that. Got a big combine going past. These so these plants are, as you can see, a profuse grower, and I planted these along with everything else this spring as basically a thumb or thumb-sized chunk of tuber or root, and look what they've done with that in a year. So they are profuse growers. Check this guy out. He's going to be great. They are profuse growers, and what I can use them for, I've kind of allowed them to bolt and grow up this year and really establish, because I didn't want to damage them before I was able to kind of spread them out and encourage their growth in the rows. Over time, they'll be regularly chopped and dropped and just be a source of mulch for the plant rows. But yeah, we're gonna get some great flowers on these. So what does that do? Why is that way? Well, the more organic material you have in the soil, the more spongy the soil becomes, and the more water it's able to carry and hold on to, and not just have it run across the surface or, kind of just pour through. So plants need that. Especially here in the valley, we have more or less a Mediterranean climate. So we have a season of rain, and yes, it's longer than the Mediterranean, but we also have some years quite the season of heat and dry. This summer has been more like it used to be here in the valley, where we've had some cool and some rain, but that's not necessarily typical. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to build our topsoil. Love these sunflowers. Some great color to them. And the sunchokes are a part of that. I've tried a couple of different things, and we'll see as a trial what they'll do over time as far as what to plant in between the rows. So the sticky stuff, that's all buckwheat, as you've probably seen in earlier videos. And the intention there is really to provide a good quick cover, and then the grass, and I'm hoping the clover will come up. I don't mind all of what you see in here right now that's green. That's primarily going to be coming up, and it's going to be dandelion. So I won't go into too long-winded, but dandelion is not a bad thing. It really isn't. People used to use it medicinally. It's not bad for humans, and it's actually really good for the soil. When you see dandelion, what it's doing in your soil is it is digging deep. They root very deeply. If you've ever pulled one out, you know that to be true. They're like a carrot, if you will, and they root really deep. And with that deep rootedness, you have a access to nutrients that maybe are deficit in the top layer of a soil. So they bring that up, and it drops in their leaves when you cut or when it dies and decomposes. And over time, dandelions, as the land improves, that they just go away because they can't compete against things like grass and other things. So it's not a weed I'm concerned about. if you want to call it a weed. This right here is a very successful, different variety of Elaeaginous. This one is not an autumn olive. Looks like it's been chewed on a little bit. We have some squirrels that are mildly annoying. This is a gumi, Elaeaginous multiflora. So much less invasive and very interesting berries, kind of very pretty little flowers in the spring. I have another one of those right here that's kind of surrounded by flowers, but it's struggled this whole year, so I'm hoping next year it will start to take off a little bit better. So what are the other winners that we've had this year? Well, we've definitely had some good ones. So we've had quite a bit of success with cherry, and which is a little surprising to me, but I guess not entirely surprising. And we've had quite a bit of success with peach and peach related. Plums have done okay, so this being a peach. Some of the plums are quite happy, and some of them you can tell have got a little bit of some issues with the leaf. Just a mild case really, and then some weeping around the trunk in some cases with sap loss from where they'd been trimmed as rootstock. But we are quite excited about the burst of growth and the profusion of, you know, fruitings and whatnot from that standpoint of the peaches and the cherries. Haven't had any cherry fruit this year and may have a few next year. This guy I made a video about earlier because he had one fruit on him and he was delicious. It's a peach plum cross. This I'm excited about next year. This is one of our mulberries. I love the plant. It's just a beautiful plant. Love the leaf shape, and it's hopefully going to just keep shooting straight up and get us some good growth, and next year we'll maybe get a little bit of fruit. I don't necessarily want a lot, but a little bit would be fun. And some great examples of some others. I've just went through and pruned everything to start giving it its shape, all the trees. Shooting for sort of a vase shape for all the stone fruits, and you know, more of an open structure. And then all the apples and pears, for the most part, unless they indicated to me that they really just didn't want to do that, I'm trimming them up to have a central leader. So like this guy right here, I'll kind of show you what I did. This is an apple. So you can see at the top here, we've got the graft or the cut from the rootstock, and the plant has put out a number of branches from there. So the first thing that I did was I went through, and this one didn't need a lot of pruning this year, but you want to make sure that the branches within an area don't stack. So this is an example of stacking branches. These are on the same side of the trunk on the tree. That little one is so small, I just didn't deal with it for now. I will deal with that probably next year. And you also don't want branches to be too close together on the trunk. You want to favor branches that are more horizontal than vertical. The more vertical, the weaker the trunk join, and the more likely they are to try and compete with your central leader. So this guy right here, this upright branch right here, is going to be the new central leader vertically, the main trunk, and then everything else will work off of that. All of these are in pretty good shape. I may tease them a little bit with wire to encourage them over the winter months to take on more downward shape. The other thing that I tried to select for with the trees is I don't want any branches that come perpendicular out towards the row, because then that will crowd my ability to go, to come through with machinery. So instead you want them to be kind of at an angle to the row, but not up and down the row where the other plants are going to be growing either. So you have that sweet spot, that 45 degrees. I'll see if I can find a good example of this. One's kind of struggling. It's a pear, Bartlett. and I didn't prune it back as much as I could have. And this one has no central leader developing yet, so I just kind of left it, and it's actually a little bit closer in what I've left and its shape to a vase or a stone fruit pruning, the method that I'm using. So you want it to come up in that sort of a shape where all the branches come out, and you don't want to necessarily favor an upper single trunk with that style. So got all the pruning done for the orchard. This year it's pretty easy, pretty fast. Subsequent years, obviously, it's going to take me more time as the orchard grows and as the plants within the orchard grow larger and more pruning choices need to be made. The soil in here right now is nicely saturated. This rain was really great, and I think with still being enough warmth through the next little while, we'll see some pretty great vegetative growth on the trees and the few small bush fruits that I have. This is great growing weather for them. That climate of 60 to 80 degrees with a fair amount of water available to them. And it was enough rain over a period of time to really sink into the soil. So those are kind of two key things. So what is left for the fall for this part of the orchard? I'm not planting any more trees, I don't think, this fall. I may get a few and put them in. There are a few that are gaps right now that I would like to order and get put in, and hopefully that works out. If not, then spring. That's my main plan, is spring, to get the rest of them planted in. I'd like to get some more loads of some mulch. We'll just, of course, see what we get. So everything thus far has been free or very nearly free, which has been a real blessing. And just reaching out to local companies, places that do tree cutting and bark chip, stables, that sort of thing. I've run an ad continuously every couple of 4 to 8 weeks in Craigslist through the summer, just letting people know, hey, if you've got it, bring it here. I'm happy to take it, and here's what we're doing with it. But I'd love to get another couple dump truck loads or big truck loads worth of mulch, and there's a little bit of some work, especially on this run. It's pretty sloped still. We didn't hit it with excavator like the rest of it, and I have some other excavator work I'd like to do. Seal up this trench. There's a few spots where I just haven't done that yet, kind of right along the joins, so like right down there, just get that covered, get these blackberries pulled, and then get them out of here. And then aside from that, the orchard itself is fairly well ready to bed down for the winter. These upper rows got a great layer of mulch for the most part, so just a few finish off I need to do. So a little more work on this top row that needs done, just to finish out the upper portion and get these rocks off of the top here. Either bring them down to this rock wall or up to that section up there as a little rock wall along there. And then